Okay, my friends, we are in Genesis still. The Jacob story, one of my favorite biblical stories, is coming up in just a bit. I had us right here with Jacob and Laban still complaining to each other. We didn't really finish that narrative, did we?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. We sort of had them sort of confrontational. They couldn't find the stolen idols. And so Jacob got a little bit miffed, and sort of tore into Laban a little bit. And now they're trying to get to sort of a peace. They're trying to get to sort of reestablish that fragile peace and connection because, you don't always have to like your in-laws. You don't always have to sort of love your family in that same way, perhaps. But you still want a relationship, right? You want a relationship with each other. Laban wants a relationship with his kids and grandkids. You got to get to a better point. And so an accusation was made, unbeknownst to Jacob, a correct accusation, but the idols weren't found, and they're trying to put some of these hostilities to bed so everyone can sort of move on with their lives here in a little bit of a better state. And so, Sandy, if you want to pick up here, then Laban spoke.
Sure. Then Laban spoke up and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All that you see is mine. Yet, what can I do now about my daughters or the children they have borne? Come, then let us make a pact, you and I, that there may be a witness between you and me."
They see Laban isn't exactly being gracious here. He's still sort of like, I still sort of feel like I have ownership over what's rightfully yours. But, let's let bygones be bygones. Let's have a pact. Let's move on from there. Sandy, give me a little more. Thereupon?
Sure. Thereupon Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." So they took stones and made a mound. And they partook of a meal there by the mound. Laban named it Yagar Sahadutha, but Jacob named it Galed. And Laban declared, "This mound is a witness between you and me this day." That is why it was named Galed, and it was called Mizpah, because he said, "May the eternal watch between you and me when we are out of sight of each other. If you ill-treat my daughters or take the other wives besides my daughters, though no," that's as far as I've got. I gotta do something. There we go. Though no one else be about. Remember, God himself will be witness between you and me. And Laban said to Jacob, "Here is the mound, and here the pillar which I have set up between you and me. This mound shall be witness, and this pillar shall be witness, that I am not to cross to you past this mound, and that you are not to cross to me past this mound and this pillar with hostile intent."
So it's basically setting up a boundary marker. The Russians are amassing on the border. Not literally in this case, but that's sort of what we have here, right? We have the border lines being drawn. Laban says, "Look, you got my daughters, Mazel Tov, I guess, but make sure you're nice to them. Make sure you're treating them well. Don't take any other wives, because that's not cool. And aside from that, look, you stay on your side of the fence. I'll stay on my side of the fence. Here in this part of town, we butter our bread butter side up, and then we butter our bread butter side down." For those of us remember the Dr. Seuss tale, maybe that's just me, the Butter Battle book. But maybe we have differences of opinions, but you know what? You'll stay your side, you'll stay on my side. We'll each to our separate corners, and we don't pass this marker with hostile intent. With love, we can pass through any border, but not with hostile intent. Can't have that. Okay, and so we have a little more talking here. Sharon, you want to pick up here?
"May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, their ancestral deities, judge between us." And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Jacob then offered up a sacrifice on the height and invited his kinsmen to partake of the meal. After the meal, they spent the night on the height.
Okay, and so right upon that sort of mound, that hill, so they say, okay, let's have a little barbecue. Everything is copacetic. We passed the coleslaw, it's fine. And then once they have the meal, that's it. That's sort of the formalization of the treaty. That they swear vows. Then there's a sacrifice, because there's always a sacrifice. To give thanks to God. And it's sort of affirming this ritual moment, and then time to have a little barbecue, right? Delicious. And thus ends the saga none too soon of Laban and Jacob. Actually, I guess not technically, it's a little bit more, but that at least ends the dispute between them. And then we jump from one dispute to another dispute, because there can't be too much dispute. In Genesis, at least. Someone's always fighting somebody. And so Sharon, give me a little more. Early in the morning.
Early in the morning, Laban kissed his sons and daughters and bade them goodbye. And then Laban left on his journey homeward. Jacob went on his way, and angels of God encountered him. When he saw them, Jacob said, "This is God's camp." So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and instructed them as follows. Thus shall you say to my lord Esau, thus says your, servant Jacob. I stayed with Laban and remained until now. I have acquired cattle, asses, sheep, and male and female slaves. And I send this message to my Lord in the hope of gaining your favor.
Oh, thank you very much. And so, early in the morning. It's never around noonish. Everyone always wants to leave early. So it's early in the morning. You got to get on the road. You got to beat the traffic. You got to get out, and they go. And so there Laban exits stage left, none too soon. And then Jacob goes the other way, and he sees angels of God. Yay, it's a little bit of a vision. It's sort of out of place in a way. It's just sort of there. There's not a lot of context. So you just have this sort of moment of being. You ever sort of like say to yourself, like, this is the place I'm meant to be? Like this is where I'm supposed to be at this moment in time, right? I think that's sort of what that is. Like, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm sort of with these angels. I'm with sort of God. I'm reconnected after everything that's happened to me over the past 20 years. I'm still in God's camp, in God's good graces. I'm on the right path. And so after this, he realizes, getting a little close to Esau here. I haven't spoken to him since the unpleasantness of the past. So send him a message. Hey, Esau, how you doing? What's going on? So it gives him a little update on his life. And sort of this little update, sort of like a holiday card. Hey, Esau, things are going great for us. We just spent 14 years. I got married twice. Isn't that a kicker? Sort of like giving him those little paragraph that you see or the nice little picture on the side. Love always, Jacob. So sends him the message, and the messengers came back. And Lindo, what did these messengers tell him?
The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau. He himself is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him." Jacob was greatly frightened. In his anxiety, he divided the people with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps, thinking, if Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, the other camp may yet escape.
Yes, we got a problem. The messengers sort of come back, and Jacob's sort of hoping for like, hey, Jakey boy, good to hear from you. It's your bro Esau. Nice to hear from you. Here's an order from Edible Arrangements. Enjoy the cantaloupe kind of thing. But that's not what he gets. He gets, oh, by the way, your brother's coming to say hi. Oh, yeah, and he's bringing 400 troops with him. And that is not great. I think Jacob's reaction was sort of more like, oh, coconuts. This could be a problem right now. This could be a problem. Jacob's a little worried. He's a little frightened. And so what's he gonna do? Well, if we're all gonna die, let's try to make this as hard as possible for Esau to kill us. So let's make two camps, one on one side, one on the other side. That way, if Esau wipes out one of them, the other camp can escape. Because if we're all in the same place, we're all gonna die. So Jacob isn't looking at this in an optimistic fashion. He's a little nervous. And so he's like, okay, let's just divide. So one of us can't run away much faster in this case. A little tough, so he's not really enthused because again, this message of, by the way, we're coming to meet you with 400 people is not seen as a conciliatory gesture that he's maybe perhaps worried that Esau is ready to kill him because the grudge is still there. The man can hold a grudge, it's 20 years. Gotta let it go. Linda, give me a little more. Then Jacob said,
Then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Eternal, who said to me, return to your native land and I will deal bountifully with you. I am unworthy of all the kindness that you have so steadfastly shown your servant. With my staff alone, I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, else I fear he may come and strike me down, mothers and children alike. Yet you have said, I will deal bountifully with you and make your offspring as the sands of the sea, which are too numerous to count.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So we remember earlier on in our program, early on in our narrative, Jacob sort of prays to God after Jacob has this dream of the angels going up and down the ladder. And Jacob sort of says, hey, God, if you protect me on this journey, if I sort of do well for myself and I don't get killed on the road, if things turn out fine, then, I'll acknowledge you and accept you as God. It's not as ham-handed as I'm saying it, but it's close enough to it. This sort of very quid pro quo kind of prayer that Jacob gives. Now it's a little different. Now Jacob is really sort of praying because he's scared to death. He's praying, for his life. He's actually praying for God to save him from what's going to happen. They say, oh, remember, God, you said things will go well for me. Well, you know what? You got a problem. It ain't looking good here. It's a lot of trouble coming down on me. So maybe, give me a hand. And so that's what we have here as his prayer, because again, he's worried about his brother. And so after the prayer, Jacob says, you know what? I have another idea to maybe assuage Esau's anger. Melissa, you want to pick up there?
After spending the night there, he selected from what was at hand these presents for his brother Esau: 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milch camels with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 he-asses. These he put in the charge of his servants, drove by drove, and he told his servants, go on ahead and keep a distance between droves.
Okay, and so he's still maybe a little angry. How about a nice gifty? Everyone loves a present, right? It makes everyone feel good to get something, in the mail. And this is a little bit bigger than something you could get from Amazon or whatever it might be. You're going to get this huge delivery of livestock. Take my livestock, please. So we got 200 she-goats and other kinds of goats and ewes and rams and camels and everything else. And says, go with these animals and see what's going to happen, because who can say no to a camel? Everyone likes a camel, I wouldn't, but other people apparently would like a camel. They're unpleasant animals. It's what it is. But nonetheless, for riding around the desert, you can do worse, right? So if you haven't ridden one yet, it is an experience. Okay. Melissa, keep going.
He instructed the one in front as follows: When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, whose man are you? Where are you going? And whose animals are these ahead of you? You shall answer, your servant Jacob's. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and Jacob himself is right behind us. He gave similar instructions to the second one and the third, and all the others who follow the droves, namely, thus and so shall you say to Esau when you reach him, and you shall add, and your servant Jacob is right behind us. For he reasoned, if I propitiate him with presents in advance and then face him, perhaps he will show me favor. And so the gift went on ahead while he remained in camp that night.
And just keep sending him gifts. Jacob's coming eventually, tell him, but keep giving him gifts. All the gifts that we have here for all these great, fantastic prizes. It's past door number 1, and so it's sort of this parade of livestock. But Jacob's, you know what? I'm gonna stay right here. I'm gonna chill where I am because I don't know how this is gonna turn out. And so Jacob really is trying to butter him up or propitiate him, which I guess is fancy way of saying butter him up with presents. You learn a new vocab word each day. So we have this idea of Jacob sort of being, look, it might be a little rough to call him cowardly at this point. I mean, the man knows his limitations and he knows what he has, and fighting 400 men, or I don't think is one of his is in the cards for him. And so he's trying to find a way to make this right. Tried just giving the old hey hello email, and now we're on gift giving. So he's a wing and a prayer to see if we can fix this. Okay. And listen, want us to finish this off of here?
That same night he arose, and taking his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, he crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After taking them across the stream, he sent across all his possessions.
Yeah, so again, he's just trying to clean house of it. He's going to keep these possessions, but he's just trying to separate everything and say, okay, you guys go over here, and I'm going to be by my lonesome for a little bit. I need a little quiet time to meditate and to reflect. Actually, I see Tyler's shoulder. Tyler, do you want to read a little bit? Okay, hold on. Let me scroll down. So now he's all by himself. He's all alone with his thoughts. And now we get a little WWE style action. Go ahead.
Jacob was left alone, and the man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." But he answered, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." Said he, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with things divine and human and have prevailed."
Excellent. That's right. That's good right there for now. So Jacob's by himself, all by himself. And so now he's got a problem because now he's wrestling with some dude, right? We don't know who this is, right? And so can we make some guesses on who he's wrestling with? I got everyone on mute.
Himself or an angel?
So the psychologists and psychiatrists of the world usually give he's wrestling with himself and his own inner demons, his own inner struggles, which I like as an interpretation of it. I think that's a really good one. And the other one, the very sort of straightforward, another one is, he's wrestling an angel. That makes sense in this context as well. He's actually wrestling a divine being, because that's as it sort of, as they're battling, it's sort of, there are some maybe references, some allusions to angels here, or to the angelic status of his opponent. Any other guesses on who this might be? Some say it could be Esau, sort of going on his own and having a little brawl here with Jacob. And that, it's been so long, it's been 20 years, they barely recognize each other, as they're fighting and struggling, or at least Jacob might not recognize him in the same way, so doesn't really know who he's fighting. Another thought, is that it could be Laban coming to fight him, that peace treaty didn't stick. And he was coming to fight him, in this moment as well. A little MMA, a little, cage match here, that they're fighting, wrestling, and striving and struggling against each other. But a lot of different thoughts on who this person could be. But what's clear very quickly is that they're equally matched. That they have gotten each other into a position where they can't really beat each other. David, you got to mute. I'm getting a lot of feedback.
How about an angel of God?
An angel of God. Yes, an angel. Yeah, an angel of God. Some kind of divine being. So they're fighting and they're twisting and they're running and they're riding and they're all trying to get the upper hand, and it doesn't happen. So what does the angel, do in its interpretation? He gives them one of these, and so he yanks his hip, yanks the hip at its socket, and basically dislocates or really sort of wrenches Jacob's hip, which is tremendously uncomfortable, right? And so, but even in that moment, Jacob is not let loose. Jacob is still holding on to him, even though he got his hip wrenched. And the angel again, or whoever this is, let me go because dawn is breaking. And so he wants to go because assume there's maybe an assumption there's a time clock on this issue. Angel's got to punch in and punch out in the clock. You got to get back up. Got to get up to the heavens. I'm going to resist singing Angel in the Morning. But there's going to be a lot of sort of fighting here. And the angel wants to go. He's had enough. Playtime is over. No more roughhousing. He's got to go. Jacob says, you know what? I'm not letting you go for nothing here. We sort of wrestled to this stalemate. I want something from you. And so he says, what's your name? This what's your name is a very powerful question because yes, it can go to just the person's name, right? Jacob, right? But a deeper analysis could say this is also about identity. How do we view ourselves? And how do we view ourselves as we grow and as we change? Who are we really? Are we more than just a name? Jacob, remember, means heel, because he was holding on to the heel of Esau as Esau was being born, right? And to try to be born first. And that Jacob's life has been marked with a lot of sort of trickery and chicanery to get to where he needs to be. And so that's who he is. And the angel saying, no, that's who you were, right? Now you're going to be something else. You're not going to be Jacob anymore. You're going to be Israel, right? Because Israel means you have striven, you have wrestled with beings divine and human and have prevailed, right? And so you're no longer, no, he's still Jacob, right? His friends call him Jacob, right? His family calls him Jacob. That's who he is. So it's not like he has left that name behind. But now he's something more. He has an additional sort of name to him and a different identity. So you're no longer going to be defined by the errors or the perhaps mischievous deeds of your past. You're going to be seen now in a different light, that you're a God wrestler. You are someone who struggles and strives and you have prevailed, which is a very different idea than being, the trickster, the cheat, the thief, whatever it might be. Now he has a different identity, different sense of self. And so if we go back to the idea of he wrestles himself in this moment, it's about self-struggle and change, right? It's about acknowledging that who you were does not mean that it has to be who you are forever, that we are capable of change. We're capable of being different, becoming different through the different things we experience in our lives, through self-study, through trying to, become a better person, that we all have room for growth and progress, which is, I think, a really nice thought here for all of us, that it's never too late to change, never too late to become different, and that through struggle, comes growth. And so that's what we have here, is this ultimate struggle against himself, against maybe the dark side of his personality, to come out of it better, which I think is a really, again, beautiful idea that the Torah gives to us.
Is this a different story than God is in this place and I did not know it?
Yeah, God is in this place. It was a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that's the ladder, the Jacob's ladder, where Jacob sees the angels going up and down on the ladder when he's sleeping after his escape from his father's house. Basically, when Esau was getting ready to kill him, Jacob flees. And then Jacob sort of takes a rest on the side of the road, uses a rock as a pillow. And then he has a dream, he dreams this dream. And then he sees the angels going up and down the ladder. And that's when he wakes up and goes, God was in this place and I did not know it, and it's another moment of transformation.
And also, why does he want to see Esau after all this time?
I think that's a great question. I think part of it was that, they did live in neighboring lands and maybe couldn't avoid him forever. And perhaps I'd like to think that maybe he's reaching out, for a little bit of closure, that like they had this traumatic break 20 years ago. And that's a long time to carry a hurt, a long time to carry a wound. And he had just sort of sealed things up with Laban. And then he's sort of like, if he's making amends, like who else did he wrong? He wronged Esau. So I'd like to think that maybe he was proactive and took that step to say, hey, I realize I've also hurt my brother, for the way I lived my life. It came out good for me, but, there might be some, value to making some kind of peace or amends right now with Esau. And he drew his attention, right? So Esau might not have cared. But maybe, now something better would come of it. It's a good question. Okay. Tyler, you want to give me one more paragraph there?
Yeah.
Jacob asked, pray tell me your name. But he said, you must not ask my name. And he took leave of him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, meaning, I have seen a divine being face to face, yet my life has been preserved.
Indeed. And so the angel doesn't return the favor, or however we're going to look at this person, right? Tell me your name. No. He leaves, right? That's it. He sort of gets out of Dodge. There are different theories here. One theory being that with an angel, right, if you know the angel's name, you're able to summon the angel later. I think some of you have heard me talk about this before. They did that names have power, and then the sort of magical, sort of pagan world, knowledge of a name meant having power or control over a particular being. And so, the angel may not want Jacob to have the power to summon him whenever he wants to. So he said, can't ask my name, you don't know it, time to go, time to hit the bricks on it. And he goes away. But it really is very interesting story. And of course, again, by the shot, simple reading, Jacob says, I've seen a divine being, right? So Jacob's certainly under the working under the assumption that he did wrestle an angel, and he's lucky to be alive. And then, here, Tyler, give me one more. The sun rose.
Okay.
The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping on his hip. That is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the socket of the hip, since Jacob's hip socket was wrenched at the thigh muscle.
Thank you for that. So he's got a hip injury, right? And so the first thing we think about here, and I mentioned it a little bit before, if we're looking at this as a tale of transformation. As I said, through struggle comes growth, through pain comes growth sometimes, right? Pain can be a great teacher. And here's an actual physical pain, not an emotional pain, but a physical pain. He's always going to remember what happened to him. This moment scars him quite literally, that from this day forward, he's always going to limp. He's always going to have that physical reminder of what happened to him. Right. And it's I think, a very powerful moment that he has to sort of limp through his life. So he gains sort of knowledge, he gains maybe wisdom and acceptance, a greater sense of self and identity, but it costs him a little bit as well. You know, he is marked by the struggle. That's one way of sort of reading this. And then if that wasn't good enough, we get this extra little sentence, by the way. That's why we don't eat the thigh muscle, because it's from this story. Does anyone know what cut of meat Jewish people are not allowed to eat? Traditionally speaking, what cut of meat is disallowed because of this ruling?
That was the rump roast.
That too.
Oh, that's right. That's the only thing I heard.
That's also correct. A little higher is the delicious portion known as filet mignon.
Oh my God.
Oh,
And so you cannot, in a kosher butcher or a kosher steakhouse, ever order filet mignon, because that is an unkosher cut of meat, because that's where it comes from. And it is spectacularly expensive to remove the sciatic nerve from a piece of meat. And because of that, that's the sciatic nerve here that runs, on the socket of the hip. Because you can't remove that, it'll cost you a lot of money. We say, forget it. The whole part of that section is treif, is you can't eat it. So if you ever wondered why an Orthodox Jew can have filet mignon, that's why. This gives more credence to the fact that God wants to ruin all of our steaks, because you can't get filet mignon. You can't get a T-bone for the same reason, but porterhouse, because it has the fillet on the other side. And you gotta have all your meat like medium well to well, which is another way to ruin a good steak. That's just one person's opinion. And so you can't get a medium rare to save your life in an Orthodox place. They got to cook it to death and beyond. So
may as well put it in a crock pot.
Might as well put it in a crock pot. So, if you're going to go to a kosher restaurant, eat the fish, because they can cook fish, whatever it might be. But don't go to a kosher steakhouse is the moral of the story.
Wow.
You're paying double for lousy meat. But that's why. So one of the things I love about this is that when you would read this text, you would never think of filet mignon or rump roast or, frankly, any kind of kosher butchery, because there's nothing here that relates to kosher butchery. But yet here we are, in terms of that text being there. It's almost like an origin story for why, we can't have filet, because of Jacob's thigh muscle. So there was an Orthodox, scholar. Give me a second. There we go. Samson Raphael Hirsch. So Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch was one of the founders in the late 19th century, early 20th, of the Orthodox movement as a movement. Because Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox, they all developed around the same time. And so Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch writes a commentary, obviously, because they all write commentaries, on the Torah. And he writes this, a commentary, and he says, according to tradition, they say this connects to why we can't have this cut of meat. And he says, it's all Mishigas. Don't worry about it. Just don't eat it anyway. But it has nothing to do with this. It has other reasons. So he sort of said, sometimes we don't understand things, but we do it anyway. Which is a very Orthodox perspective. Sometimes not just Orthodox, of course, but this idea of, just don't eat it. Don't worry about Jacob and his hip. Just don't eat it, and it's fine. So it's just very fun to me whenever I read that. I think about how this one story somehow has inspired kosher butchers for 1,000+ years, and made another reason to not buy kosher meat. Okay, so
It's interesting.
Yeah.
There are comics and Charlie Chaplin that
Mhm.
have shown their struggles by fighting with themselves.
Yes.
And that's what this reminds me of that struggle of fighting with themselves and hurting themselves. It just, it's like the physical seeing it. I can see it in my head because of what we've seen in movies.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Yeah, I think there was maybe generational difference, but Liar Liar with Jim Carrey. You ever see that movie?
Yeah.
It was early Jim Carrey, ish. He just turned 60, by the way. I just saw that. He's turned 60 years.
Really?
Yeah. And there's a scene in that movie where like he can't lie, but he has to find a way to get out of something. And so he's in the bathroom and he beats himself up in order to lie.
Mhm.
And so yeah, he's like wrestling and fighting with himself. But you are right, as a paradigm of like these characters sometimes fighting with themselves to get to a different place. It's like, again, that good side, bad side, and this sort of having that imagery. I think, and I also think of sometimes with this, the people who believe in self-mortification, where they wind up like abusing their bodies in order to achieve a better mental state. And I don't think that's what this is coming from. That's never been a big part of Jewish tradition. You always have your eccentrics, but it has never been what we're looking for, a normative part of Jewish tradition. And to be fair, it wasn't really a normative part of Catholic tradition either, but you had monks, and nuns who would do that kind of thing, to hurt themselves physically in order to achieve a more desirable spiritual state. And I don't think that's what this is. I think it's, again, meant to be more of a metaphorical struggle with himself, his Yetzer HaTov and Yetzer Hara. Or again, that very simple is the sort of fighting with the angel. And that's why I sort of modify it with like, through pain comes growth, though growth can happen other ways too. You don't actually have to, go through hellfire and brimstone in order to have an epiphany. And so I think this is one of those moments for Jacob where the light bulb sort of turned on, which was nice, but he definitely goes through his own struggle.
I think Singing in the Rain. That's one that what's his name does, and he fights and then he comes out with a good idea.
Never saw it. So
okay, generational thing.
No, it's a classic. I have no excuse. Like you guys are Singing in the Rain. I haven't gotten to it. That's a very classic film. But definitely Singing in the Rain. What a glorious feeling. Okay, no, actually, Leah, while we're here, why don't you pick up here, Looking Up?
Okay, looking up, Jacob saw Esau coming, accompanied by 400 men. He divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maids, putting the maids and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead and bowed low to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother. Esau, do you want to say anything?
Oh, so that's good. When I read this, I think about the order of who's going to die. It's like the way he wants to have this set up. Who's more expendable versus who's irreplaceable. And it's sort of depressing as a read like that. At least he has the common decency to be the first one, not behind. Rachel
and the 7 times?
7's one of our magical numbers. I think 7 has that element of mystical, magical, pagan. There's something really special with number 7. So that's been carried over even until today. But that 7 has that special significance.
But we haven't read that before, have we? I don't recall it coming up.
Have we had a magic 7 yet? We've had 40 a few times by now.
Uh-huh.
But we have, I don't remember whether we had 7 just yet. 7 years for the wives.
Oh,
7 days of the week.
Yeah, 7 days of the week, in terms of
that's
creation.
true.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so we got that. And so, yes, this 7 being, again, a very important number is all. A lot of bowing, a lot of scraping.
Yeah.
But yeah, 7 is one of those happy numbers.
Mhm.
So I like to say all these numbers can be happy if you, try hard enough. If you can't think of a reason why it's special, you lack imagination. That's what I always like to say. You can make something up. But 7, of course, yeah, being very powerful. Okay, Esau ran.
Esau ran to greet him. He embraced him. Yeah, embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. Looking about, he saw the women and the children. Who, he asked, are these with you? He answered, the children with whom God has favored your servant. Then the maids with their children came forward and bowed low. Next, Leah with her children came forward and bowed low. And last, Joseph and Rachel came forward and bowed low.
So it's nice. It's a family reunion. Isn't that a wonderful thing? We're all together. Now, of course, there are those of you who might remember from about a month and a half probably ago. I'm trying to think where we are in the calendar. Maybe a little bit more. I actually gave a little drash, a little interpretation on this part of the Torah. And there is a rabbinic parable, a rabbinic legend that says that this embrace wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. That it says that Esau sort of flings himself at Jacob and falls upon his neck with the intention not of kissing him, but of biting him. And of biting at his jugular to try to tear the flesh off Jacob's neck to have him bleed out. But God then made Jacob's neck full of iron, made it like iron or brass or whatever it was. Made his neck marble. That's what it was, marble. Makes his neck solid marble. And then Esau bites him, and Esau breaks all of his teeth. And so that's why they both wept. They wept because Esau was in a lot of pain from breaking his teeth, and Jacob wept because he thought his brother liked him again, but instead tried to pull the old Dracula move on him. So that's why they wept together. So just the rabbis having a little bit of fun at Esau's expense, as they are wont to do. But in the regular reading of this, it's nice. A little hug, kiss. Everyone's happy. Look, meet your nieces and nephews, your sisters-in-law, your many sisters-in-law, and just like now we have this family reunion, and it's really lovely. And so after this nice moment, Jacob's like, "What the heck? Why did you come meet me with all these troops?" And so, Leah, you want to give me one more? And he asked.
What do you mean by all this company which I have met? He answered, to gain my Lord's favor, Esau said. I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. But Jacob said, no, I pray you, if you would do me this favor, accept from me this gift. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please accept my present, which you have brought, which has been brought to you. For God has favored me, and I have plenty. And when he urged him, he accepted.
Yes, that's right. It's actually saying, what's the deal with all this stuff that's here? And why'd you send me all these camels, basically? And it's okay, it's a gift. Oh, I don't need a gift. I have everything I need. Oh, no, please take it. Blah, blah, blah. So it's a lot of little back and forth here. Oh, you're too kind. Oh, don't be silly. Blah, blah, blah. So, to get to the point where, Esau does accept the gift. I just love the line, accept from me this gift, for to see your face like seeing the face of God. Oh, we're such a big time right now. We're really trying to make sure that we don't get our butts kicked. And so when you compare your brother to God, it's not a bad play if you're looking to preserve your skin. You receive me favorably. It's a nice move. When in doubt, flatter somebody. As long as it's true, right? That's the key. You can flatter as long as it's true. And I always think about Les Mis for some reason. The last one of the last lines of the play is to love another person is to see the face of God. A spoiler alert. That's at the end of Les Mis if you haven't seen it or heard it. Okay. But again, and it makes me glad too, because it's nice, right? When we have connection again. That's sort of what I think about, right? It's like when we're in a loving relationship, it doesn't have to be romantic, but when we're in a loving relationship with somebody, when there's kindness and compassion and empathy and support, when all that is in a relationship, when you see that person, and you're connected in that way, it is really special and it's sacred and it's a holy moment, especially when you haven't seen each other for a long time, and so I think that's sort of what he's saying here, not that you have God's face, it's a little bit much, but it's more that like that feeling of awe and of splendor and of, again, perhaps love, in this moment. It makes me feel better, it lifts me up, it makes me in a better place. So I think that's what he's trying to say here, that in this moment of reconciliation, of teshuva, of coming together, so it's like God's presence is with them in this moment, which I think is sweet. And so it's a nice thing. Okay. And so, not to sort of ruin a lovely moment, but they have, and then as soon as they're together, Jacob's like, you know what, that's enough. It's time. Like we had this nice moment. Okay, it's enough. So David or Susan, either of you want to read?
Sure. Oh, me, you. We'll take a turn. We'll take turns. All right. Hold on. I don't know if you can hear us. All right.
You just muted yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
And Esau said, "Let us start on our journey, and I will proceed at your pace." But he said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. If they are driven hard a single day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, while I travel slowly at the pace of the cattle before me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir."
Yeah, you go on right ahead. We'll stay back a little bit. You just don't worry about me. We'll catch up. Okay, keep going.
Then Esau said, "Let me assign to you some of the men who are with me." But he said, "Oh no, my Lord is too kind to me." So Esau started back that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed on to Succoth and built a house for himself and made stalls for his cattle. That is why the place was called Succoth.
It's just so rough when you're reading this. So, okay, you want to take your time, that's okay. I'll leave some of my men, and so when we'll catch up together, my men will be with me, it'll be fine. It's like almost like giving you bodyguards. Oh, don't worry about it. I don't need your bodyguard. Just go forward. I'll catch you later. And of course, Esau goes one way, and then Jacob goes the other way. He goes to Sukkoth. Sukkoth. Well, we have it's not why we have them, but that's the same name, right? That he made booths for his cattle. That's why it's called Sukkoth. Sukkoth. So, yeah.
I thought Jacob wanted to see Esau, that he initiated this.
I think he initiated it as a, hey, how are you? And now that everything is sort of copacetic, that was enough. Jacob didn't really need to have Thanksgiving, I'll put it that way. He just sort of needed that moment for himself and for reconciliation to say no hard feelings. But they weren't going to be playing football in the yard like the Kennedys. That wasn't going to be the thing that was happening here. It's just more like, wanted to make peace. But I think after that, Jacob was sort of done, which is sort of to me a little bit depressing, but a recognition perhaps of that, just like the scar, just like the wound on the hip, that it's not going to always be the same. Too much has sort of happened. And Jacob doesn't really trust him, and he's not really ready to hang out, I guess, in the same way. Esau seemed to be a little bit more inclined.
Maybe Jacob was kind of paying Esau off so you'd have safe passage, and that he wouldn't attack him.
Yeah, again, I think he wanted the moment of connection, right? Whether it was pragmatic, as you just said, maybe that like he just doesn't need another enemy. I mean, who needs another enemy in the world, right? Versus some kind of maybe greater gesture of reconciliation. I don't know. But it sort of ends as quickly as it began, where they sort of have this moment of reconciliation, and now they're never going to talk to each other again, at least biblically speaking. Yeah, we don't have any reference to them ever talking again.
Don't you think that there is some guilt on Jacob's part? I mean, taking Esau's birthright and then running away. I think Jacob.
I think there's a lot of emotions. I think there's a lot of emotions to process, and I think that's very well said. That I don't know whether or not Jacob can even forgive himself. Maybe maybe that's part of it too. As you were saying, maybe he has all this guilt and all these sort of feelings that seeing Esau again sort of brings that up about how he acted in the past. Remember, now he's no longer Jacob; he's Israel, right? He's a different person, and trying to move on from his past. And Esau is a reminder of his past. Maybe what you would say a reminder of the worst that was in him at a time. So seeing that person every day and sort of hanging out in the spirit of brotherly love, maybe that wasn't really capable for Jacob at the moment. And as we're going to see, not this week, but in weeks ahead, we're going to have that same issue with Joseph and his brothers as we get there. Again, brotherly love is a great theme of the Genesis stories, to be sure. So Jacob goes. He goes to Shechem, in Canaan, having come from Padan Aram. He makes camp, and then he buys a little land, and he just, that's where they're going to set up camp, set up shop. It's enough wandering. Got the wives, I should say. The wives, got the kids, got the cattle, you need the land. So he's going to buy a land, set up shop, and hang out there and continue to raise the big old family. Right, a good spot for 34. Yeah, go ahead.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
What is birthright? What do you get for a birthright?
Usually it's the birthrights that the firstborn gets that entitles the firstborn to the lion's share of the inheritance. In the case of Jacob and Esau, that the actual, I don't think there's ever sort of a document. It's more of a principle that the firstborn is entitled to X, Y, and Z that they get for being the firstborn. And so it's like their right, their property, their just from being born first.
But Esau apparently did okay on his own without the birthright.
He made his own way in the world, right? I mean, like that, yeah. Esau was able to sort it out. It just goes to show you a little power of perseverance, right? He sort of made his own fortune and his own history, for himself. It wasn't sort of overly hampered by it. So
right.
He did okay. He did okay for himself. Okay, my friends, it's 8:00, and so we're going to transition to our next class from one to the other. And so we're going to continue with adult B'nai Mitzvah, and we're going to do a little Maimonides in a minute. So that's what we have.
Good night. Thank you,
Bye,
Rabbi.
Sharon.